Hello, it's Sarah Seidelman. Welcome. This is the Hummingbird series where I deliver to you many magical people who I feel like you need to get to know. And today I have Heath Armstrong with me, who is the amazing creator of this fabulous deck, the sweet ass Affirmation deck. Mine says Domination, but it's the Affirmation deck, which is this incredible deck of cards, which I've used many times in my retreats and gatherings. So Heath, so glad to have you here.
I'm really
Welcome.
pumped to be here for sure. And yeah, you got the OG Kickstarter version of that deck, it's cool to see because every time I see it, it reminds me of all the progress that we went through to get that thing launched and the transitions.
Yeah. I want to hear about that process. Before we get, I just want to give people a little taste of like your medicine that comes through these cards. So I pulled a card that I thought would be fun for everybody. Well, I just pulled a card randomly for this recording. So whenever I share these cards, I always give a little warning, like you might get us, like I sometimes have like a ladies luncheon, of like, and I just like, hey, I'm pretty salty, but I don't want anybody to be offended. So these cards are a little salty. If you're not okay with that, don't pull one. And everybody's like, okay. But when people pull these, they're like, oh my gosh, they just are so wonderful. So this card is, I get super high. I never stop peaking. And the card is when when your weakness is exposed and you feel like a helpless donkey strapped to an operating table. Love the beastie. Remember that you are not the first one to be diagnosed by the peanut gallery. In the sinking pits of despair, you must trek your way forward to the next great summit. Expose yourself and be transparent. Reflect the wisdom of your fall back into the world. The lowest points in life are preparing you for the next highest explorations. How high can you get? Never stop peaking. I mean, I feel like you and I are like brother and sister from another mother because we have this kind of like, no matter how bad it gets, it's like, keep going. Yeah. It's gonna like, yeah, and so.
We have the same hair.
And we have the exact same hair.
Could be the same, yeah.
So you used to be a concrete engineer in your former life or something like that.
Yeah.
Tell me, like, how did you go from being like, tell us the story of how you went from concrete engineer to like amazing creator, author, multiple business creator, like, yeah.
Yeah. When I was a child, I was thinking about this the other day for the first time in a while. I wanted to be a writer, Sarah, which is funny because how many children grow up to become what they wanted to be when they were a child? I think a lot of the mission in my life is helping people discover that passion they had as a child and then, go back and fix that, if they became something else, go back and make it right and become what you wanted to be as a child. I didn't think I had a shot at doing that. I would write funny things. I mean, at one point in like high school, I made a ridiculous rap album, which was kind of like writing. But even that has come back full circle and become something more like spoken word with passion and grit now. But I went to school and I didn't know what I wanted to do because in younger elementary and middle school and high school, they're teaching you things that don't really guide you towards following passion. It's just a bunch of, for me, it was a lot of mindless dribble that just kept me feeling more confused about what to do. And so when I got to college, it was like, I'm very thankful to be here at college and have this opportunity, but I'm doing what everybody else is doing. Let's see how blackout we can get every day. Let's see how not serious we can take this because none of the classes are interesting to us and we're all majoring in things we don't really care about. I took a major it was a program called concrete management, which was legit. It's like construction management, but in the concrete industry. It couldn't be more boring because it was like the first school that had that program and the placement and the careers, the job placement was high and the average starting salary was higher than most. And really because I wanted to major in geology, but everybody kept telling me that you're just going to become a teacher if you major in geology, which isn't necessarily true. I guess it is for a lot of people, but like teaching isn't a bad thing either. It's just the way that they said it was like, oh, I don't want to be like a high school teacher or something. I love that there are people that can be that kind of force in town. I had some of the best teachers influence me when I was in high school, but it wasn't really something that I wanted to take a path of. When I was a child, I had a lot of vocabulary issues and spelling issues, and I was always scoring in the lower 5% in the country on my test scores for writing and grammar and spelling. And they were like, well, you can't, like as children, they're showing kids like, oh, look how stupid you are. Look how low your scores are compared to everyone else. You really shouldn't write. You really shouldn't do this. And it wasn't my parents that were saying that to me, but it was teachers. And I was like, well, I guess I can't be a writer. So I never thought that I could. I ended up majoring in concrete management because it was the closest thing to geology, but had a better placement. And I spent a lot of years. The first job out of college, I was working for $13 an hour in a factory making basically concrete containers that go underground that carry human feces and waste. And my job was to make sure that the quality of these containers was was good enough to carry feces and waste underground. And, I was doing it. I was like, well, I got a degree and I'm making $13 an hour and I can barely live off this, but well, I guess I'll just keep drinking and keep getting blackout and not taking anything seriously because I don't feel any connection to creativity or passion. And that went on and on for, I was in that industry for 10 years, really, given I was working kind of in it before I got out of college and then all the way until I was able to build businesses and leave my job and become an entrepreneur and become creative and get back in touch with my child self. But I had some blackout moments, Sarah, where like I got really, it's an unhappy thing. Like I'm spending time in relationships that I don't really care that much about, taking substances in my body to numb myself of the fact that I don't really care much about this situation. And I don't really like the job that I have. And I don't really know where I'm going. And I think when you're numb to all of those things and you're trying to cover it up, you're really ripe for a sledgehammer to the face from the universe, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It could be a rock bottom moment. For me, it was waking up face down in my garage with the door open at like 11 o'clock in the afternoon and my car still running in the front yard and my dog staring at me like, what are you doing? I've got an empty bottle of liquor near my hand. I don't remember the last 40 hours. Clearly I drove somewhere. And that was just one of the really dark moments that I had of trying to figure out, why do I feel so miserable in this position and what else should I be doing? I didn't give up thanks to the help of a lot of really miraculous people that showed up in my life and that I was strong enough to pay attention to. I think people show up in everyone's lives, but it's like, are we numbing ourselves to the point where we're not noticing it? If we can just pull that skin back a little bit to notice the one person who's there, can that lead to one more person? Can that lead to 3 people, 5 people? Can that lead to inspiration to start making changes? And it did. Eventually, I was having a really hard time, and I opened up my phone. It was like one of the first smartphones or whatever. This was like 2013-ish, maybe. And it was the first time I noticed the podcasting app got put on the iPhones. And I'd never even heard a podcast before, I don't think. And I opened up the app and it was, of course, it was an episode of Entrepreneur on Fire. It's so cheesy, but like, it was so perfect back then. It was kind of just getting started and raging and it was really popular. And the episode that I saw was about this girl. Her name was Amber Ludwig. She's now Amber Vilhauer. She runs a company called No Guts, No Glory Enterprises. And her story that she was sharing was literally going from this depressing, hard kind of adolescence experience into creating a website company and slowly but surely getting a little bit of business to the point where she was able to kind of pull herself together creatively and then creating this no guts, no glory kind of pursuit to fighting for her passions. And something in her voice, like it wasn't her message, it wasn't anything, but something in her voice intuitively was hitting me that I couldn't ignore. And I was like, I'm going to message this woman and just see if she responds. Like, I don't know what I'm going to say, but I'm going to message her. So I sent her a Facebook message. I found her on Facebook and I sent her a message. And I'm extremely introverted and I don't get out of my shell much. And I'm working on it usually. But I sent her a Facebook message and she replied immediately. And she didn't ask, like, I think I just said, thank you so much. I'm struggling or something. And your message really helped me. She didn't like say you're welcome and disappear. She actually said, do you have 15 minutes that I can call you this week? And
Wow.
I was like, what? Like that, why would this, what I thought, famous, she's on like
Right.
huge show or whatever. Why is she going to take the time to call me? I didn't know she wanted something. Like I felt scared and nervous, but I was like, yes. I felt intuitively. And she called me and we talked, and she just instilled confidence in me. And she was like, what are you doing? Let me, like, what are you passionate about? And since meeting Jared on the plane in 2009, several years before that, when he asked me certain questions that really made me shift my thinking, but I hadn't actually activated on it. And for those of you listening, it's a whole nother story, but I met this amazing dude on the plane, and he was being extradited from Rwanda for fighting for gender equality and human rights, essentially fighting against human trafficking. He asked me some questions like, what are you doing? Do you love it? And gave me a book and some things that changed my thought process, but I hadn't figured out how to use that stuff to move forward. Well, when Amber called me, she kind of reiterated like, hey, there's people out here doing this, and you've got the strength. Like, I believe in you, and here's some ideas of what you can do. And here's some people that I'm going to introduce you to that can help teach you things that I think you could use to make a transformation. And of course, one of those people she introduced me to was a guy named Paul Kemp. This is cool that we're talking about this because I haven't gotten on this road in a while, but his name is Paul Kemp, and he ran a podcast called the App Guy Podcast. And he was a British guy, and he had a lot of episodes by then. And I was like, man, this podcasting thing's kind of interesting. And he just was so friendly, and like, he was like, who are you? Like, what are you doing? Let's talk about some stuff. And then he just started helping me for no reason, just out of the kindness of his heart. And then he was like, you should start a podcast because your voice is good for podcasting, and I can help you. And the other person she introduced me to was a guy named Hal Elrod. And Hal Elrod, of course, is an international best-selling author now. His book he just had the original Miracle Morning book back then, but now there's a whole bunch of them. But I got in contact with Hal. I devoured his book called The Miracle Morning, and I created a morning routine. And in that morning routine, I introduced, journaling and writing and habit creation, and really thinking about what I wanted to be and how do I overcome and these obstacles that I have and get to that point. And with the morning routine, and then with Paul helping me start a podcast, that was just the beginning of infinity for me, because I was so scared to do any of that on my own. And all I needed was one person to make a connection. Like, it only takes, Sarah, one person to connect you to somebody else, and for you to pay attention can change your entire life. And I tell Amber that all the time. When I talk to her, I reach out to her. I'm like, listen, you don't understand how many people that you've impacted because of this. I went on with Paul to create my first podcast, which was called the Artsy Now Show, where I interviewed hundreds of creative entrepreneurs around the world. And I learned something from each one of them. But not only that, I was able to help channel that information to people that were listening, that then in return change their lives in some way and help them overcome obstacles. And all of that has transitioned into what I'm doing now. And so it's wild, the support that we have that's invisible. You can't see it until you really, truly dive into the darkness without knowing what's going to happen. And it's been a crazy ride. That's for sure.
And you send that message, you reach out. And I love what you're saying about, like, how did you do all this? How did you transform? How did you make all the things you've made? It was because of others. It wasn't that you did it alone. It wasn't like you had an aha and like suddenly saw the light and like just got out of bed and started doing it. It's like you needed all these people around you, slowly, little by little. And it reminds me, like, this deck, I loved it so much. And then when I decided, I think I want to make a deck, Nancy, who's my social media helper at the time, was like, what? Because we're both such huge fans of your deck. She's like, why don't you contact them? And I'm like, could I do that? I don't want to bother them. But sure enough, I sent you a message on Instagram, and then what a delight, like, to get to know you. And it was just such a treat. So I love that being creative and finding our courage is not a solo job.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. So you started this podcast where you interviewed hundreds of, and that's called, tell me the name of the old pod, because the new podcast is Never Stop Peaking, which is amazing.
Correct. Yeah.
Everybody should listen to that.
It's called the Artsy Now Show, or the longer
Show.
name was the Entrepreneur Now. And it was really miraculous, because that was another, like, me being very scared of obstacles and like talking to people and asking, and like it was just this continuous process of me healing myself through going for what I thought was not possible. And Paul kept pushing me, and I was like, okay, I'm going to start this thing. What do I want to create in my life? That's always the first question to ask yourself, is like, what kind of lifestyle do you want? If you can create like write down 5 core values of who you want to become as a person, like, what does that look like? Who are you? Who's around you? And then kind of construct your life around that. You can really break it down from the base and go all the way to those core values eventually. And I wanted to work for myself because I was just miserable on Saturdays and Sunday. Like my Saturdays were miserable because I was thinking about how the next day was Sunday, and that was the day before Monday when I had to go to work. Like if you're like that, which
That's
a lot
bad.
of people are, like if you're like that, there's an issue and you need to make changes. It doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to worry about the money thing. Like things will work out when you start transitioning and aligning yourself with who you really should be. And it was really crazy. I interviewed, so I reached out to this Hollywood director. His name was Sohrab Mirmont. It was the second episode that I was reaching out for. Paul was like, just find some people. And he's like, find someone that you're really scared of talking to. And then that way, when they say yes, you're going to be committed to starting this thing. Because, we could plan all this stuff out. And a lot of us are really good at resisting things by planning too much. We're like, oh, I'm going to get my logo and all this stuff ready before I actually launch anything. We spent all the time in the world on that. And I did that a lot. I started a couple website companies back then. I legit started 3 different businesses that I ended up shutting down that never really made any money because it was all resistance. And I wasn't doing anything that was actually effective in that process over those few years. And I reached out to this guy named Sohrab Mirmont. He won the New York International Film Festival when he was 19. The interview is up still. And it's crazy to go back. I mean, I warn anyone who goes and listens to these. It's like, I was a baby, but in the transformation, if you listen to some of those older episodes, and then you go back and listen to the newer ones that never stop peaking, you can see this transgression that happened. And I was like, hey man, this is who I am. I created a core vision that I wanted to be able to work for myself, and I want to be able to travel the world. How can I do that? Well, the answer was finding people who were doing that and asking them how they did it. Right. And so through podcasting, my target was like, I'm going to contact creative people that work for themselves and creative people that travel the world. And I'm going to ask them how they did it on this show, share it with other people. And then eventually I'm going to take all the answers that I'm getting and put them into some sort of system that I can adopt into my life, and then see if it works for me to make a transition. Well, it worked, and it made a transition. So Rob said yes, and he came on my show. He said one thing to me that changed my entire life, which was at the end of it, I asked him, I don't even remember what I asked him, but he said, listen, man, every day is a bonus round. So slow down and enjoy something beautiful. That's one of the cards in the domination deck or the affirmations deck. That really, I wrote it everywhere. I put it on my mirrors. I put it everywhere. It was like, no matter what happens, it's a bonus round. Every moment we have is a bonus round. Enjoy it, relax, and chill. Like chill the fuck out. Like just stay calm. That was my problem. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to do that without numbing myself or, freaking out. And I think a lot of creatives are like that. But so I did that. I interviewed people. I reached out to some travel podcasts that I listened to, Extra Pack of Peanuts and Location Indie. 2 guys running that, where Travis Sherry and Jason Moore have become some of my best friends today. They helped me for no reason. They taught me their systems. I listened, I learned. And then by 2016, I quit my job. I sold everything that I had. I took all these things that I learned from these people and put them into a system that I was adopting and using. And it was really helping me, which a portion of that would become the sweet ass journal to develop your happiness muscle in 100 days, which I released in 2017. And then I moved across, I sold my house. Like I had a 4-bedroom house full of furniture. I got rid of everything to what I could fit in my car. It was the most freeing thing ever, because I really truly believe that our possessions own us, and it's a problem. And I was in that constantly cleaning and paying for things and taking care of things with my time, instead of being able to work with things of value to create stuff into the world that matters. And I moved across the country. Through the podcast, I met a guy who ended up teaching me about e-commerce, And then I was able to build an e-commerce business that was doing 6-figure months within 18 months of starting that business. And like, that's crazy. Wow. I mean, way more money than I was making an entire year at my job. And I didn't know how to manage it. I didn't know how to handle it. Eventually I would learn some really hard lessons in entrepreneurship when I would lose everything multiple times and try to build it back up again. And I'm grateful for all of it. I'm grateful for every experience. But one thing from Amber reaching out to me, that's all it took, was for me to listen to her. I could have easily shied away and not let her call me. I could have gone back to it. And I still have patterns of doing that today. I'm not saying that it's easy. Even when you get to being successful, it's still hard. But if we can learn to break our habit of hesitation, it's a lot easier to get in alignment with who we want to become and explode our passions.
Yeah, for sure. That hesitation is just like, I think that's what most of us struggle with. Like, we get so excited about something, maybe when we're sitting alone out in, for me, it would be like, I'm out alone in nature. I'm just having a really like kick-ass day. And like, I'm thinking so expansively. And then like the hesitation comes in, like, oh, you know, whatever, fear of whatever. The Gremlins, as you speak so fantastically about in the car, in the deck. Yeah, like tell me about what are some of your Gremlins like top hit songs they like to sing to you? Like, you know.
My Gremlin top hits.
Yeah.
And for me, it's always self-love is a very strong thing that I think we all have to work towards. And it's not that I don't love myself. It's learning that I have a value beyond reason of what I can comprehend. With hesitation, I often will have these brilliant ideas, and like someone will offer me a collaboration or something. And I'm like, that sounds like a good idea. But I'm learning that if you don't start that action immediately, you're likely not going to. And I don't care how successful you are. Most people that are really, really productive and really banging stuff out that is working, they take things and they start them right when they show up. And that's how you destroy a habit of hesitation. I mean, that goes down to like exercising daily. If I wait till 3 or 4 and I still haven't done it, then the chances of me doing it are pretty slim. So if I wake up and I count down from 5 and I put my shoes on, like give yourself a 5-second limit and just do it. All I have to do is put my shoes on and then I'm good. It's not hard. You know, it's just those little things seem so drastic because hesitation and fear and procrastination gremlins, they are the enemy, and they work towards us being creative and being progressive and, you know, really creating habits that fortify the strong things that we want to do in this world to expand light and love and things like that. Like there is a polar opposite to everything. If you don't think that there's a fear that's trying to stop you from doing stuff because it doesn't want creativity to shine, you're wrong. Like it's a very black and white, you know, light and shadow. And it's not about hating one side and loving the other. It's about learning to work with both sides and saying like, hey, you know, fear gremlins, hey, procrastination gremlins, I understand that you're there, but you aren't all of me. And I'm going to hug you so that you know I'm paying attention to you, but now you can step aside and let me do what I'm here to do. As opposed to like constantly fighting and giving it your negative energy, because they don't want anything more than you to just give them your energy, right? Give them your energy and don't do it. Like, don't do it. Like you can actually use your shadow for a lot of motivation. You can use your anger and your pain to really channel some great creative work if you learn how to control it. You can also use it to allow it to cripple you until you end up face down, pants down in the bushes outside your house with some whiskey in your hand. Like it's all about, I think, in the creative pursuit, how you choose to react to your situations, and reacting in a way that's in alignment with becoming the person that you want is going to be much more beneficial than reacting in a way that keeps you on, you know, your couch with your hands down your pants with a bowl of Fruity Pebbles and Jerry Springer yelling on your television.
Yes. I love what you're saying about like, and I love that what for you, this kind of begins, it sounds like with your morning habits. Like that's where you're in, I want to use the word integrity. That's the word I like really relate to, because integrity is what for me, integrity, for example, is plugging my iPhone in the bathroom so that when my alarm goes off in the morning, I don't just lazily pick up my phone and lay back in bed, which is like, the death knell. Because then I'm like, oh, how many emails did I go? You know, and then the next time I'm like, I think I'll go back to bed. I can't do that. So it has to go off 20 feet from me. And then once I'm up, I don't even think about looking at Facebook. I'm up. I'm fucking, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go get our coffee. Let's go meditate. Like, what do you tell us about your morning routine and what you've tried, what doesn't work, what does work? Yeah.
Well, that's one that really works because I've used it effectively, is putting the phone far across from where I'm sleeping.
Yes.
But getting up really early before everyone else is awake there's something really unbelievably creative that happens between the hours of like 4 and 7 a.m. And if I can get up at 4, the rest of my day is just, I don't know why I don't there are days where I don't, and I'm like, why? Because I just feel so much better when I'm awake early. But I get up, I put some cold water on my face. Like, I'm out here in the woods in this RV because I'm building out a van to live in, and there's a stream down here and it's getting cold, and like getting out and walking outside froze the past couple nights without putting my coat on and stuff, and standing out there barefoot in the cold and watching the sun come up, or walking around and just getting your body moving in nature is a really effective way to wake yourself up, but also to remember, like, hey, this is earth. Like, this is abundance. Look at how amazing and magical this is before all the distractions of the cell phones and the emails and stuff start pouring in. And then on top of that, I mean, I have a pretty solid morning routine. I just ended up, I wrote for like 10 hours yesterday. I was working on this whole post on biohacks that I do to keep myself feeling great and high levels of creativity and energy. But I invert my body on a stand for a couple minutes at least. The feet up stand essentially is what it's called, to where I can't do a handstand, but like, you basically are on your shoulders. You can put your feet up on the wall too. That's a great way to get your energy flowing and creativity moving and blood pumping. Jumping rope is also incredible. Whatever you can do to just move your body for 5 minutes. And then I'm generally doing some sort of sacred ceremony where I'm doing about 5 minutes of breath work. Could be as just what Wim Hof teaches. You can get his app for free if you're interested in that. It's just deep breathing for like 3 rounds, and holding your breath at the end of a deep breathing cycle. And then I sometimes have a hape ceremony where I salute the different elements and I talk to ancestors and all of the deep, gritty connectivity things. And hape is sort of like an Amazonian tribal snuff that is, have you done hape?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So my friend Noel made me a Curipe, which is really beautiful tool that you use to facilitate this medicine. And I've been sitting with that a lot lately, and that puts me into a whole nother mindset. And when I come out of that, I usually go into some sort of poetic writing, and I plan my day. I think, okay, what are the 2 most important things I can do today to move towards my visions and goals and my dreams? I write those 2 things down on a note card or in a journal. I generally always have a note card with me because I can hold it in my pocket and carry it around. And on the other side of the note card, I write down an affirmation of what I'm working towards becoming, but I do it in the present tense. So I am location independent, living out of my van, for instance, might be an affirmation that I'm using because I'm currently working on that. But when I started using that affirmation, I didn't have a van. I didn't have money to buy a van. I didn't know how I was going to get there. But by looking at it every day, you're reaffirming to your brain that this is real. And then subconsciously, you start making decisions that fall in alignment with that dream. And when you're making those decisions, you start to take action to bring it to life. And that's how vision comes to reality. And every time something pops up, it's like, whoa, like this really manifests. And this is a real way that the universe plays with you, but you have to be willing to pay attention to it, and you have to be willing to take action. And the only way I've found for that to be effective is by reviewing it every day in the morning. Like, who am I? What am I trying to become? And how am I going to get there today by taking a step? And it's really that simple. And there's various other things I do in the morning with cacao. I usually have a cup of hot cacao with turmeric and MCT oil in it that really gets your theobromine pumping through your body. It makes your blood flow. It opens up your heart a little bit. It improves my mood, and it doesn't have the crash of a coffee, because coffee has caffeine, and most people don't really know that caffeine actually doesn't give you energy. It just blocks your ability to feel tired. It literally blocks your receptors in your brain from feeling tired. And when it wears off, there's an excess of these, I think it's called adrenosol maybe, or I can't remember the name of the actual chemical that attaches to the receptors and makes you tired, but it blocks it from happening. And then all of them flood your brain when it wears off. And you know, your body's still tired, but you tricked your mind into thinking you're not. It's not really that healthy. There's a lot of health benefits to caffeine and coffee, but moderation. And unfortunately, I have a very addictive personality, Sarah, and I can't take things in moderation. So caffeine has been, I think just finding these things. Yeah. A little bit of nature, a little bit of breathing, planning the day. It's very simple stuff, but very effective.
And the early morning stuff, I'm right with you on that. And that can be hard for people to hear because they're like, oh my God, if I'm going to get up at 4, I get up at 5. It's like, well, if you're going to get up at 4, then you need to back calculate when you're going to go to bed, unless you're a person who can afford to take like a mid-afternoon nap or something. And so like, but I find those hours very precious too. And I kind of grieve them when I do let myself sleep in. And it's like, I wake up at 7 or something and really luxuriate, which sounds so luxurious, but then I'm always like, because once that sun's up and once everything's happening, it's like, it's okay. I'll have another chance tomorrow, but it was really precious.
I feel you. There's a part of me that's always like, I should be thankful that I was able to sleep till 7. I love this bed. But then I'm like, fuck, man, I know that streak was going so well for 3 days. I couldn't keep it going. Like, I do know for a fact that the more I wake up early, the happier I am and the more productive I am. So,
how do you, like, if you had, a lot of the people that are listening to this podcast may be feeling like they're wanting to keep going with their creativity, or they're feeling stuck and, or maybe they're stuck in a job like I was, like you were, feeling like, geez, I don't know if this is the way I want to contribute to the world. Like, what advice would you offer them if they, what do you say to people who are like, how did you do it? Like, what, do you have any words of wisdom to share?
You're a space-driven hunk of magical meat strapped to a skeleton made of calcium and collagen and stardust, flying through space at 67,000 miles an hour around a giant ball of fire. A giant ball of fire that is, approximately 300,000 times the mass of the Earth. Your fear it's an illusion trying to stop you from being creative. It's a baby step thing. Like, you have infinitely more power than you think. And if you can create your vision, and I'm saying like core values, what are your core values in life? Who's surrounding you? And then you can create a mantra that supports those core values. I mean, I can give you an example of my mantra for people if they want to hear.
Please.
This is something I recite to myself every day. It's like, I'm taking in the pieces of what my future, what I want them to be, and I'm making it very visual, and it changes every time I say it, but I say it out loud and I do it with my eyes closed. And therefore I try to bring this into reality. And so I have my core values of who I want to become. And I'm working on this really cool system to teach this stuff to people in depth that takes them through the actual exercises of doing it. But so for like a core mantra that you could use every day, for me, it's like, I am so incredibly grateful and excited, like so excited to be able to work from anywhere, including inside of my pole barn on my flourishing land, next to my greenhouses, next to my solar powered energy efficient home, and to be able to work with my gorgeous and intellectual and intelligent life partner on projects and products that help others discover their unconditional love and truth in this world. My baby pup Sachitananda is running through the fields with my little Pleiadian blue-eyed daughter who's barefoot, running freely as well, free range as fuck, like the chickens. And I'm just in awe watching this over the hillside with the fog coming in and the sunset coming down, and just grateful to be able to have these experiences. I'm also grateful to be able to work from anywhere, including inside of my camper van as I drive around the continent and experience waterfalls and deep forest groves and pockets of inspiration, meeting people and cultures and discovering things that I've never felt or seen before to help influence my creativity and expand my ability to create unconditional love through projects and products that help myself and my partner and my daughter and my dog and others discover unconditional love and truth in this world. I am truly alive and full of light. And as ye sow, so shall ye reap. Memento Mori, Hokahe, Matiosh is deep gratitude as well. So
Oh,
like
wow. That's so
creating,
beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, and it feels so real. And the more you do it, the more real it feels. And here I am, I have a van and I'm like working out of this pole barn. It's not mine, but I'm getting an idea of what it's like. And
Yeah.
I have all this land around me. And like, I didn't have that when I started writing this vision. And everybody can come up with this type of mantra to recite with your emotions and with who you really want to be in your passions. And like, it's extremely valuable. And then just carrying that down the totem, it's kind of like a system of chakras. Like once you have your core mantra, you can then create your long-term visions out of it, which are sort of the things that you would put on your vision board. For anyone who has a vision board, you can know how effective they are. But for instance, I might have a picture of my van or a picture of a hobbit home that I want to build into the side of a hill, or a picture of a partner that I would like to bring into my life to be able to work with. And I'm actually writing like my home on this and reciting it and looking at it every day visually, or my partner, or, my van. And then underneath your long-term visions, you have sort of what I call short-term burst visions, which I do these over a 100-day period. And these are tracked, measurable goals that I try to achieve over essentially 3 months. I do 100 days because each day is trackable by 1%. And it's one of the methods I learned from lots of different entrepreneurs that I interviewed. And I create charts of 100 days. And I know that if I'm on day 5 and I've done all 5 days, I'm 5% there, but I'm also 100% complete so far. If you can get to 60, I want to tell people, if you do 10 of those days out of 100, you're doing better than not doing them at all. So there's no fear as to starting and failing, because you can't fail as long as you start. You're doing better than you would have by not doing it. But ultimately, I see myself get between 60 and 80% on these 100-day streaks for most of the habits I'm trying to bring into my life. And so I'm tracking measurably these short-term bursts, which are in alignment with my long-term visions on my vision board, which are in alignment with my core mantra and my core values. And then every day when I'm doing my morning routine, I'm picking 2 things that I'm going to accomplish that day before anything else. If you can do it before anything else, if you have to go to work early, or spend time with your children or something, just make sure you do it by the end of the day, and do the 2 most important things that you can that are going to move you forward the fastest. Don't pick the low-hanging fruit, because those things will get done on the wayside. But those are all in alignment with each other, like chakras. And then I build habits at the base that support all of those things as well. So like the habit of having the morning routine in general, the habit of waking up and writing, the habit of exercising and sweating every day, the habit of going outside and spending at least 30 minutes with the sun on your face every day. All of those things support my ability to feel good enough to do the 2 things I need to do in the day, which then aligns with my 100-day short-term bursts, which then align with my long-term visions, which align with the core mantras and values. And that's how you take a vision to reality. You piece it all together, and in action and vision, they love each other. So
yeah. So using your imagination to create a vision, sometimes that's the first thing we need to do, is take that, and we don't have to get it perfectly right. We just have to, just sit with ourselves and think about what would be fun if there were no limits and there were no rules, and then taking those tiny steps. So, and if you are wanting to transform your life, I highly recommend you get yourself one of these decks, and maybe the journal too. So tell us, like, where can people find you, Heath, and where can they find your products?
Oh, look. Oh, wait. Here's yours.
Aww,
they look good together.
So sweet. They do. I don't have mine, but
yeah, I'm redoing ragecreate.com. We're putting up a new site soon. They're still on there. They're on Amazon as well for now. Sweet Ass Affirmations is what they're called. Domination Deck was the Kickstarter version. I think it would still come up if you type that, maybe. The journal is also on Amazon. It's called the Sweet Ass Journal to Develop Your Happiness Muscle in 100 Days. I also have a new one for diabetics, which is, so here's the happiness one. I didn't, These are just here because I was referencing them yesterday. I wasn't planning.
No, it's good. We want to see them.
This one is really a special project because, well, Caitlin the co-author of this one came to me, and she's diabetic, and she runs a company called Party Like a Diabetic, and she helps people living with diabetes to implement things that lower your stress level, which then in return can help you with your overall health and your relationship with diabetes. And I learned so much through the process, but we were able to take a lot of the principles of the happiness journal and combine them with a lot of the knowledge that she had with living with diabetes and create this awesome project, which unfortunately we launched it in the spring when the pandemic thing was slapping really hard. So we never really had a proper launch for it, but it's trickling out a little bit. And it's really special for anybody that may be living with any type of diabetes, even pre-diabetes. My father was just diagnosed with pre-diabetes, which is interesting. And yeah, it's a cool project. And
awesome. I will link to all those. Yeah. Well, this has been such a delight to have you, Heath. Thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to the next time we have a conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Okay.